Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech About Town, brought to you by Communitech and Elevate IP. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Kinsella.
I am the other host, and my name is Tina.
We've got an exciting episode. We're going to kind of keep the intro short today. Not that I don't want to sit here and vamp with you for a little bit, but the episode it's a longer one. It was really entertaining. I wish I had hit record like 10 minutes before you came in the room.
Yeah.
Because we were riffing on all things electric vehicles.
I know. Even when I came in, and I was like, damn, I just interrupted a very good conversation.
Today we have Jennifer Buchanan and Andrea Curry from Clockwork are in the studio talking tangentially about electric vehicles. What we're really talking about is the challenges with electric vehicle charging. So range anxiety used to be the big thing. You're driving somewhere far away where the charging spots that you can hit up on your way from A to B. But that's only part of the problem. The other part is that if you get to that charging station, does the charger work? So are you going to be able to plug in, get your EV juiced up and back on the road in a reasonable amount of time? And so they're helping electric vehicle charging station operators make that a reality. So welcome to the show, Jennifer and Andrea. We're happy to have you here.
See, now I'm nervous all of a sudden. You hit the record button and I feel like there's this light.
I know, that's why we talked about getting one. And then I'm like, if we get one, it'll throw people off because we'll see on air and then get a little hesitant.
Oh, you wanted to get the actual sign?
On the outside.
Oh God, even I would freak out. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I'm like not even looking at the little record button.
I forget that it's on sometimes. And if you'll ever see me kind of look at the board like this, it's not that I'm checking the time. It's that I'm making sure I actually hit record.
It's still recording.
Because I've had one mishap where it was like 5 minutes.
And you're like, that's great content.
We were just talking. I was like, no, this is really good. And I just looked over and I'm like, oh.
And then you ask all the same questions again. And the guest is
and the energy's gone. And they're like, what happened? Hey, speaking of energy, there's a good segue.
Well done.
So Clockwork. Did we say Clockwork Energy or Clockwork?
Clockwork.
Clockwork. Okay.
Clockwork.energy would be our website.
The website, yeah. So Clockwork, electric vehicle charging, but not necessarily the actual chargers themselves, right? This is more of the kind of holistic platform around how charging gets done. So can you tell us a little bit about the company and kind of your journeys too, because you both have extensive experience through other companies.
Yeah, and I think if it makes sense, it is part of the journey, and I think that would be the right place to start around what is it we do and why, and how did we get here?
Sure. You want me to go?
I do.
So Clockwork is operations and maintenance software for electric vehicle chargers. So essentially, in the world of charging today, a charger is down typically 1 in 4 times in the public domain. So imagine like pulling up to the gas pump, you plug in to get fuel, it doesn't work 25% of the time. And then the other 3 of 4 times, you might be like plugging in, unplugging, just a lot of friction in the process. Or you might be expecting to be there 10 minutes, but you're there an hour because you're getting basically a trickle as opposed to a full charge. So our platform essentially operates all the processes that make that go away at the end of the day. So we monitor all of the things surrounding the charging network, not just the charger itself, but all the things that are needed to make it work, which is a lot of like equipment like routers and gateways and electrical components. And so we pull all that in. We monitor that, we detect issues, we have algorithms that detect issues, and then we resolve them by either automatically resolving them or rolling a truck, sending a human to resolve them. But how we got there essentially is, Jen and I worked together at a local company here called Exonify. And after Exonify, Jen went to Google. I went to an EV charging company and brought them into Canada, a hardware and software manufacturer. And we had a 99% uptime guarantee, and I put some chargers in the ground, quite a few actually, under that premise. And when they got live, I realized that, 99% was kind of 99% of not the whole thing, just a small piece. And so, chargers weren't working, and that really bothered me. I had traded on my brand. And this is nothing exclusive to that company. It's the entire industry, essentially. And so I thought, how complicated can this be? and couldn't put any more in the ground, just felt really compelled to solve that problem. So reached out to Jen over many coffees and beverages, eventually convinced her to...
Some yoga thrown in there, a lot of Zen moments.
Eventually convinced her to come and start a company called First Harmonic Group, which was a consulting company. And we were really doing consulting because we had those skills to put chargers in the ground, but trying to help people do it smarter and prevent this issue. Meanwhile, we'd both been 25 plus years in software, so we always knew we were going to build something, but we weren't exactly sure what to build. Mm-hmm. So we tried a lot of things on. Every Monday morning in our meeting, Jen's first bullet point in the agenda was, who are we?
We really wanted to get our hands into the problem to understand what's the driver experience, what's the owner-operator of the charger experience, like why is this so difficult, and peel back those layers so that we could figure out what we needed to build to address it.
Yeah, maybe in a minute you can talk about, a cross-country adventure and those kinds of things. Eventually, we started doing, corridor development projects and standing up some charging, and we didn't want to leave people hanging on this operation side, forecasting, a certain model, but then having a different reality when it came down to it in terms of what it cost to support this infrastructure. So we started shopping for a software solution like Clockwork to support our partners. We looked at a few kind of preliminary things out there, but we just thought, this isn't the whole picture. We can do it better. And that's where Clockwork was born. And from there, it was very fast. Like, we made a decision. We were able to get some grant money together pretty quickly. We hired a team of 6. We started building. We signed a bunch of partners and customers. And we now have about 1,500 chargers online and a product. And, we're sort of off to the races.
Where are the chargers in Ontario? Are they kind of across?
They're across Canada and the U.S., really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's amazing. I always love
with plans to go into Europe. Like it is North America right now and then expanding.
Yeah. No, I always love these stories because it's very evident where there is like one pain point and then like a startup comes in and like really solves it. And it's always just so satisfying to see how it
And that's where
all
this
comes
really
together.
started, because we, as Andrea mentioned, if you're a non-Tesla driver, 25% of the time when you're plugging into charge, it's not going to work. And it's going to take multiple tries. But if you are the network, you're saying I've got 99% uptime of my chargers. And that is true for one piece of the software. But there's a lot of other things that have to work well for that charge to be delivered properly to the car. And that is, while we were doing the consulting work, we're like, this is not okay for the driver. Like, you've got one group saying 99% uptime. The stats are saying 25% downtime. There's a big disconnect there. And the driver's the one that feels it.
Yeah.
But who we're working with are those operators of the chargers to give them the visibility of what's actually happening in that charger so they can keep it up and running.
Well, I mean, I think too, like in the early days of electric vehicles, not that we've been around that long, but in the early days, it was range anxiety was the fear, right? I'm not going to be able to get from A to B without charging. I can't go on a road trip because I don't know if there's going to be a supercharger here for this or this infrastructure. That wasn't even the only problem, because you're saying that the problem was you got there is a charger and it's not going to work. It's like
Or there's one charger. Is it going to work?
Yeah.
And it has to work.
Well, I always think of pulling into a gas station, you see like a bag over the handle. You're like, okay, cool, I'll go to the other pump. But this is a situation where you go and there's no bag over the handle. It doesn't work. And you've probably queued up for 15 minutes just waiting to find out the other person is still trying to plug in and, see what happens.
Well, and let me be a stereotypical Canadian hockey mom for a moment. If you're working all day long, then you're picking up your kids and you're going to some small town in Ontario, taking your
Ayr,
kids.
for example.
Ayr is where I live. You are taking your kids and you're going like, you need time to make sure that you can charge and that something's reliable if you're going further. So it's the reliability and that charge anxiety or range anxiety is real unless you know that when you get there, you're going to be good. You've got what you need. You can charge the same way you would with a gas pump.
I'm trying to think where the charger in Air is. There a charger?
There's one, and it's at the Cedar Creek Public School, and you can only use it off school hours.
No. See, I thought they'd have them at the NDCC, but they don't.
They should.
Stop
but
at Jen.
Yet.
She's got one in her garage.
That's
There you
true.
go.
That's true.
But Tina, to your point, I think it's always when you're starting something like this, like having passion for that problem and being super committed to making this happen for something, greater than your own gain, I think is so important just for the staying power of, what it takes to 10 years out, see something through. So
For sure.
we are both so connected to this problem, as is our entire kind of founding team. So to your point, like I do think one of the great things about the Waterloo startup is just like there's so many great stories of people being really, really connected to that problem.
For sure. And it's something that even we see a lot when we're doing, I feel like this podcast, it comes through a lot where people are really like in it themselves. They're experiencing something and then they really find like a solution that works.
I'm going to derail the whole conversation. Flames or rockets?
Flames.
Okay, cool. Rockets.
But we would cheer on the
Oh, yeah,
rockets
same.
for
vice,
sure.
Vice versa. Yeah.
I love that because I thankfully I do know what you're referring to. But Alex is notorious for making statements that I honestly sometimes can't follow. And they're funny.
It's hockey.
Sometimes I don't know them. Remember the quantum conversation with Sasha?
Oh, God. Yeah, sorry. It's a whole nother.
Quantum.
We had one quantum guest on and it went off the rails.
No, Alex knew what he was talking about.
Well, no, I was repeating what the guy had said. So,
Sorry.
but not speaking about quantum. One of the interesting things with this, though, too, is like the infrastructure for gas stations that we know today. Like we are all familiar with it. Pay at the pump, pay inside, whatever it happens to be. I was thinking the other day, I was driving and there's an SO and it had gas was like $1.17, and there must have been 40 cars in the station. Before we got on the show, you were kind of talking about charging overnight, and it was like 61 cents to get a massive amount. How does that play into? Because I think when I drive by like like an EV charging station, there's no sign that says it's this much a megawatt or whatever. I don't even know how to measure it, and I think that's really where you come in of like, how do I actually say by car and then by charging station what actually matters?
Right. And there's home charging, which 80 to 90% of people are charging at home. But when you're out and about, what is the cost going to be? If you stop at the charger at the en route, if you stop at the charger at the library, what is the
Do you think
charge?
about that as like EV drivers? Because
honestly, it's so much cheaper than gas that I don't think we're yet at the point of worrying about the cost.
Yeah.
Now, they're like Tesla supercharging network is more expensive than other networks, for example. So like there's a little, thinking about it, I think, but I don't think we're yet at the point where, we're shopping around based on 2 cents. It's so interesting. We always hear pushback on EV and like once you drive an EV, it's just such an amazing driving experience that I personally can't imagine going back. But I was at but we do hear a lot of pushback in terms of, the friction in the public charging process and these kinds of things. But I was at Costco the other day and there was a lineup of, people at the gas station for 3 cents a liter, right? Discount at Costco. And it was just like,
it might have been
they're
me.
sitting there for so long. And I used to do that too. But it's just so interesting how we're so sensitive on the price of gas.
But they're also willing to wait. But then they won't wait 20 minutes while they fully charge an electric vehicle.
And you don't even have to sit in your car. You could be doing your Costco shopping. So it's just a whole shift in the paradigm around what we're willing to do and not willing to do. And I really think when you start, driving an EV, you just plan differently, sort of.
But you're right. The Costco gas experience, you're there for at least 20 minutes in
easily,
lineup, easily for an extra 3 cents. Yet pulling up to an EV charger for 20 minutes, there's chatter about that, about why would I, spend extra time to do that? But you can go in, grab your coffee, grab a restroom break, and then you're ready to go again.
Well, I think like you said, I think you probably plan your life a little differently once that's something that you've invested in, right?
Exactly. You make your stops count. And instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to stop at the gas station, then I'm going to go, get my coffee, and then I'm going to go get a bagel, and I'm going to do these 3 things, and I look for them close together when you're on a road trip. Now you're like, where am I going to stop that while my car is charging, I can get my coffee and get my other things. There's a patch of grass for my dogs.
But all those people at Costco made a similar plan. There's not a Costco at every corner. They planned to go there while their car was needing to be filled up, but it's familiar to them. I think it's a big piece of it is just it's new, it's unfamiliar, and it's change that there needs to be better education of what does that look like.
Yeah. Is that something that Clockwork is kind of focused on as well? Like kind of opening up that conversation?
Clockwork's about making the experience reliable and predictable at the end of the day. So if I'm planning to go, let's say from here, I just got back from Ottawa. If I'm driving from here to Ottawa and I know I need to stop, in Kingston, let's say, then and it should take me 10 minutes to fill up, then we make that happen. So you show up, the charger works every time. The first time you plug in, it works. That's what we do at the end of the day is make sure that the operators supporting that infrastructure have, the ability to stand behind that experience. Whereas today there are a lot of undetected things and things out of their control that they cannot, make that experience predictable. Oftentimes, the most common way that they find out about an issue today is when a driver reports it. So imagine you go to charge and you plug in and one charger doesn't work. You're not going to take the time to report that, 9 times out of 10, you're just going to the next charger and trying again. So it's only really when a driver calls and really needs that experience that they even find out it's down today. So what we do is make sure they know before the driver. They have they know specifically what is wrong with the charger, and then we send the tech to resolve that in a short period of time. So today, a charger in the public domain, a fast charger, when it's down, it's 6 to 8 weeks before it gets back up and running. That should be 6 to 8 hours. And Jen and I come from, tech 99.99% uptime SLAs. So the whole 75% was devastating, to be honest. When I started into the industry, I was just scratching my head at how this could be an acceptable thing, especially for energy infrastructure assets that are going to be critical as this evolves. So
it just seems sorry.
I was just going to say it's important to think of the charger is different than a gas station, where the gas station, there's people on site there that if a pump's not working or if it's slow, they're telling the operator that's right there. The charger that's maybe in the back of that parking lot, you've got, a bank of 6 chargers. Who do you tell that it's not working?
Well, that was going to be my next question, because it seems it's always a little bit of a Wild West situation where there's a bunch, obviously Tesla operates supercharging network. But then if I go to a gas station or I go to a public school in air and there's a charger, who owns that infrastructure? How many companies ballpark exist today? Just even in Canada that operate electric vehicle chargers.
And if you own that charger at the arena, the last thing you want is that one of the drivers has to phone you to tell you it's down.
Yeah.
How long has it been down by the time you get that phone call?
Yeah.
So to answer your question about who owns it, so it's kind of think of it like ATMs in a 7-Eleven. So the 7-Eleven doesn't own those ATMs. They're assets that a third party has put into, and they're paying a transaction fee to 7-Eleven in exchange for that retail space, basically. Same thing for the majority of public charging. The person who owns the chargers and operates the chargers doesn't actually have any connection organizationally to what we call the site host, the property that it sits on. They're renting those parking spaces or leasing those parking spaces, then running their own private business in the parking lot. And then they're paying, a fee for a lease fee or a portion of the revenue to the site host. So the last thing, if I'm a Starbucks, Tim Hortons, whoever, the last thing I want is someone coming in and bugging my staff about an asset that has nothing to do with me that's operating in my parking lot. And I think this is a problem with a lot of distributed infrastructure. If you think about how many times, I don't know how many of you have ever tried to use those pay vacuums at service stations that aren't, those things are almost never working, right? It's the same situation. The staff don't really support them. You're paying by either tap or putting coins in. It almost never works. And so, these are, you can get away not vacuuming your car at that stop, but you can't get away not charging, right? So we need to think about these distributed assets essentially fundamentally differently. And we need to, what we do really is provide those operators the ability to keep those things online and running, even though they're kind of all over the place and not on site. So it's a very different kind of problem to solve. And to answer your question about how many, in Canada, there's probably like a dozen large networks and hundreds of small networks.
Well, it's an interesting thing because then you basically have these people who are running small businesses, kind of like a hairstylist renting a chair in a salon.
Right.
Right.
Good one. Very good one. You're hired.
As the bald person who knows that reference. But with that, they're losing money if their charger's not working. And so you're really helping them make more money.
And if they're coming into this space fairly new, like maybe they're bringing chargers on it and expanding their portfolio, they expect them to work the same way a street light would work. It's just electricity. It's just you set it up and it runs, and they haven't felt that pain yet to realize that there's a lot more to it. So that's who we're working with. That's who we're giving them that visibility, the insight into what's happening at these thousands of chargers that they're starting to put in. What's actually happening on site that they need to know about, and then they can proactively make sure that they're up and running.
And we're working with the larger networks as well, because a lot of them have invested, so they're losing revenue. So take 25% of your utilization off the top. Then second to that, they're paying 5 times what they intended supporting the assets. And the really good networks, the best networks out there, have figured out a lot. And this is kind of the last piece, if you will. What we do is sort of the last piece that they can't manually figure it out. So a lot of them have put in really tight service contracts with great partners, and they've got all the data they can, and they've learned so much. And so say that their networks are only down 15% of the time. It's still 15% of the time, right? Which is material to their business. So sometimes the best run networks are our best customers because they're trying the hardest. They really want this business to be profitable, and they're sort of all in.
One of the I assume you might know the answer to this. So one of the questions I always had around infrastructure is if you look at gas stations, which have been around for 100 years, I guess, give or take, like modern.
I just wrote an article on this. Give or take.
Good, a good while, right? So they're everywhere. You know where they are. You understand the signage, the pricing. They all have a convenience store that's overpriced. But they're really geared towards a car. Cars pull in both sides, fuel go, probably 5 to 10 minute kind of transaction. EV charging can go anywhere, probably depending, quick charge maybe 5 to 20-ish minutes. What would it take, or is there any kind of push for this? Where I always wondered, why don't gas station operators kind of invest more in EV charging? Like if you're looking today and say, I know the mandates keep on changing when we're going to get rid of internal combustion engines. It was 2020 this year, and now it's 2030. Who knows? It'll go back and forth. If we're going to get rid of gasoline as a fuel source, but we have this existing infrastructure, is there any kind of push to do that, or is it?
I think yes, and I would say this in the last year, end of 2024, 2025, I think some of the early investors in EV charging are starting to see it become profitable. And so you do see not as much here in Canada, although we do have Parkland, which is in the fuel and convenience business. They own the On the Run network, which is one of our larger networks here in Canada. But one of the largest networks globally is Shell Recharge, so that's owned by Shell. And we do see others stepping into it. It felt like they were experimenting until very recently. But now I think utilization is there in terms of making the business case, making it a self-sustaining business. So I do see them, not just Shell, but others coming on stronger and stronger. So I do think you'll see more and more of that. Globally, BP is in the business. Other oil and gas companies are stepping in, but they also, they're making so much money. They can't give up what they're making on oil and gas today. And if you look at the real estate of a gas station, it's not necessarily the greatest real estate for EV charging because they can only put in so many chargers before they have to step away from fuel. From a pure real estate standpoint, most of their real estate in their parking space is dedicated to fuel.
Yeah.
And so
if you take a look at a lot of those gas stations, and we've done the drive, we've been looking for site acquisition. You're looking for, do you have 8 parking spots that you can give up? Do you have the ability to start? Most gas stations are set up for just the exact footprint that they need, and they don't have the extra space. But you can put chargers in so many other places, and you see them like at malls, outside restaurants, hotel areas. You can charge anywhere, which is very different than the gas station model.
And it's less environmental impact. If you think about radiation for a former petrol station.
And those chargers, if you're putting them in a mall, at a grocery, it actually increases the traffic and the spend that's happening in those sites because you've got 20 minutes. So I can go in, grab what I need for dinner, come out, and then you're on your way again.
Yeah, the convenience store format, and there are some, variations that I think as we see like quick service restaurant come in and these things. But generally the convenience store format isn't exactly what you want to do while you're charging. You're not necessarily, it's hard to spend 20 minutes in a fuel convenience store.
Unless you're 13 and then hang out at the slushy machine all day.
Yeah. I think, there needs to be a fundamental kind of rethinking and redesign of that infrastructure, and we see some of that. But, to your point, the barrier to entry on putting EV chargers in your parking lot is pretty low. And it is like an extra X $100,000 to remediate a gas site to put high-speed charging in.
I was thinking, I live next to a former gas station site, and I've lived there for 20 years, and it's still empty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's prime. It's in Belmont Village.
Send us that site. We might know someone who wants that.
Okay.
I was just about to say, I was like, oh, okay, perfect.
You can go to, because you shouldn't go to Arabella and have a couple beers and charge your car, but there's like Gifted. You go to Gifted and go shopping, and then, then
you
charge
can
your
go
car.
eat at Arabella.
You could go eat at Arabella, and then maybe have water. It's fine. It'll be okay. I'll edit that out.
I would love that experience. Yeah. I'd have water, of course.
Yes, yeah.
As we
of
all
course.
They have non-alcoholic beverages in Arabella. It's fine.
Do they?
You got you got Rigatino across the street.
Patios open.
Yeah, you could.
We always try to.
Well, Arabella has fire food. I'm just going to put that out
It's
there.
very good food.
Very good food. So
amazing.
Long time. It's time I go back. Clearly,
yeah.
It's time I go
and
back.
they change the menu like every other week now. It feels
and
like,
or
they add in stuff every other week.
And there might be a future EV charging station there.
Who knows? Yeah, because I don't think there's no EV charging on.
Not that I know
Belmont.
of. Not in Belmont.
Catalyst. That'd be the
Catalyst.
Catalyst definitely has it.
Yeah. I know my neighbors go over there and charge all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like a dumb question, but
there's no dumb questions in this podcast.
I know, but
this is about learning and discovery.
Of course. But I feel like I'm always that person, but I'm just going to ask it. In terms of, so it's like Clockwork is a B2B product. B2C, is there anything that kind of consumers, like, do they know when a charging station is down? And
so
I think this is a perfect question. It's a brilliant question that we could maybe talk a little bit about.
I'll let you talk about some of that. So we are actually launching before this podcast airs. Let's hope. We are launching something we're calling the Clockwork Charge Score.
Okay.
Which is essentially it's really to help the industry find a better measure and a better metric for how charging works. And we're offering this report essentially to charge point operators, so people who own and operate charging stations for their sites, but also we're going to offer it to regulators who've been giving out hundreds of millions of dollars, billions globally to, lift up electric vehicle charging infrastructure, but without a way to measure the performance of that infrastructure or hold people accountable. So, us being very passionate about just helping the industry, we're going to offer the Clockwork Charge Score, which essentially is more than uptime, which is, a very, I would say, misused term in the industry is, we have 99% uptime. What we're measuring is whether a person can charge successfully the first time, essentially. And there's
every
a lot
time,
of
every time,
every time,
the first time, every time, like not just a new driver, but every time you go and charge your car, do you get a charge the first time you plug in?
And we're discussing with some of the hub technologies now about how do we get that in the hands of drivers so that they can, when I'm using we don't make the apps that drivers use, but we can integrate and send them the score so that as they're planning their route, they can see, oh, the charge score on this specific charger is X or Y. So, today they're relying a lot on reviews, which are amazing, but spotty and not, always there, and something that takes time and interpretation. We want them to be able to rely on also sort of a bottom-up score that
think of it like Rotten
provide.
Tomatoes. Like I can take
There
a
you
look at, as I'm driving to Ottawa, there's an en route charger. What's the score of it? Should I plan to charge there, or should I plan to charge somewhere else where I will definitely get a charge and 20 minutes I'm on my way?
Yeah, I can see the little icon on maps, right?
Yeah.
You're going and you're just
Well,
like,
now I want to know, what do you see when you visualize that? What does it look like?
well, like the nerd in
Asking
me,
for a
the
friend.
nerd in me would be like I like the old school, like the little battery, like it has like 4 cells in it.
Oh.
And it's like, if it's great, it's fully charged green.
Yeah.
And kind of yellow and then red at the bottom, right?
I
'Cause
like
then
it. I
visually,
like
you're just
it.
like,
Yeah.
that's,
I was going to say, I also see a battery because it's very common even with like electric bikes when you rent them or something, when you're in a city, a lot of the times they'll signal through like a battery. So
I
I feel
love it.
like that's like the icon that never goes. Like everyone still has
Yeah.
a disc for save, and you're like, no one uses a disc.
Oh, you're right.
So
Right?
true.
It's so-
I bet our
what
kids
else-
don't
but
even know what that
they
is.
don't. They know it's save, but like my kids have no idea. They've never put a disc
floppy
in
disk.
anything. They've never even seen them.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, but battery, everything has and it's always the same. Like no matter what you go to, like my camera, whatever.
I was going to say, that's why I love this idea, because across the board, it's going to be something that's going to be, recognizable, and something that's going to be super, like it's just going to be, like people are going to be able to depend on it. And I think that helps so much in this scenario.
So the report, the operator can use it to make sure they're leveling up and that they've got a good, reliable network, and then the drivers will be able to recognize it as a place to go.
Yeah.
And
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to add, and the regulator can use it to find out, okay, we gave this operator $10 million. Should that have been $5 million? Or, how do we form our programs going forward to make sure that we are responsibly spending tax dollars?
And we're getting a really positive response from that in the last just few weeks, even as we've started to share what we're building, work with some of the regulators that they're starting to tie in uptime to the money that they've been giving, that it's only getting paid if that uptime is something that they can prove.
Yeah. And I liked it with your metric. It's actually not just the uptime. It's, are people actually able to charge?
Yeah.
So it's great
Right.
you've spent the money and built the thing, but if it's sitting there useless,
Right.
what are we doing?
Yep.
Yeah. I also think it becomes like an attractive feature to non-EV drivers, because then it's like there's something easy and reliable. And I just feel like you know what I mean? It
Well,
just,
I had a family member who just purchased a new car and they went gas, but they were debating, and it came down to, I don't know where I'm going to charge. I heard it doesn't work all the time. I don't want to fumble around with it. And they went internal combustion.
Ooh, I love
Right.
the idea of like reliable chargers near me as
Yeah.
an exercise.
Like a
is there
map.
some quick tool we could be like, hey, put in your postal code or put in your zip code, and
just need to
we
integrate
will
with
show you
Google.
what's around.
Or even for hockey, when you're doing the arenas,
Yeah,
and you can be like, here's
can
where
I
you're charging.
go
Yeah.
here? Even when I was buying my EV, my family's from the Peterborough area, so I'm up there pretty regularly.
Peterborough Pete's.
Yes, hockey again.
Sorry, the guy who opened Arabella was the captain of the Pete's in the late 70s.
Oh my God, it all comes full circle.
Bob Schnurr.
Peterborough, Arabella.
We're
And
connected.
I
I
didn't-
think we're related
I
back
didn't.
somewhere.
I didn't know. I know his daughter. Like him and his daughter opened it, and I know their family, but I didn't know that. And then our coach of our team this year, we were having lunch across the street, and he's like, "Hey, the coach of the Pete's opened that place." I'm like, "Bob?" He's like, "Yeah." And I looked it up, and sure enough,
Okay, we're going. We're
you go.
going.
We'll go right
Soon.
after this.
Yeah, right after
the
this.
Peterborough Arabella connection. Sorry.
But
Sorry, Peterborough.
when I was looking at buying an EV, I mapped out of like, okay, we're in Peterborough quite a bit. We're Hamilton. Like, where are the chargers? And can I still do my regular driving, the family visits? Does it all work? And if we had this logo on that map to show, that would be fantastic.
Well, even gas. There's nothing like Gas Buddy will tell you, where you can get the cheapest gas. But imagine having something integrated to like a Maps or like a Google Maps, I'd be like, okay, well, kind of like an easy option.
And there are apps out there like Plug Share and other would be the largest, most widely adopted, and that will tell you, where you can charge nearby. But again, it's very review dependent. So we'd love to send this score back to them from a consumer standpoint. But we just think the industry needs something categorical. Like to Jen's point, regulators have said, I need 97, 98, 99% uptime. But there's, no real way for them to get that information categorically today, that it's basically kind of up to everyone to self-report in many instances. So we would love to allow them to use our charge score and just have this independent view that can't be faked. And
I think they're far more aware now that uptime is not the same as first charge success. And they're aware and they're looking for the real data now.
Yeah.
But I think this would be a perfect time to talk about our first 3 weeks of forming this company and the road trip that we took, where we started back.
You go.
So you want me to go? You want me to go?
You go.
When we started the company, we really wanted to get our hands in on the challenge and what it was. And Andrea had the brilliant idea that as new founders together, it would also be great to to do this road trip. So we decided we should drive across Canada in an electric vehicle and get a better understanding of what that charge experience was from a driver's perspective, province by province by province. And we were fortunate we didn't want to take a Tesla because Tesla has a whole infrastructure that's different, and we'll leave that for a different podcast. So we wanted non-Tesla, and we were fortunate to be sponsored by Vancouver Volkswagen with a brand new ID4. So we flew into Vancouver, picked this vehicle up, which neither of us had ever driven this particular one. And then we went out to Victoria, to Mile Zero, and we started our road trip across, and really wanted to understand what is the charging infrastructure, what is the reliability of these chargers, what's the attitude of other drivers as we're going across. And it was so eye-opening, and really kept going back to this challenge, because often as you're driving through the mountains, there was like one charger within a 2-hour drive radius. And you're like, that's the charger that has to work. Like, if we don't get that charge for our vehicle, what's our plan? What are we doing to keep going? And it was different province by province as we went through, of the difference of having enough chargers, but they were, a good number of them weren't working, but at least there was choice. You've got 1 or 2 chargers, and it better be working in other provinces as we went across.
Fascinating.
Yeah. What an iconic story. I actually love that.
Well, you talk about like problem discovery or customer discovery. It's all of it in one, and you're also probably learning a lot about each other.
Yeah.
Well, that was the other part of like, let's do this early, because if we can't make it across country in a share, and we were on a budget, so sharing a hotel room and a car all day, we're like, if we can make it through this, we can make it through the next 10 years as founders.
If you can make it through 3 weeks of a road trip, you can.
It was
go the long run.
The biggest test, I think, of our time together yet.
We made it work. High fives.
I love that.
Car karaoke. We discussed politics.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's funny. Even just kind of jumping back to the charge score thing, when you were talking about it, I keep on thinking of, again, the gas station sign of, regulars this and diesels this, charge score, right? Like, is that the future?
I like it.
Yeah.
Alex,
because you can like, adjust the current signage now.
Right.
Right. But then for those non-gas station locations, those would be the signs.
I like that a lot.
100%. Yeah.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Because that's really the thing. I mean, as a consumer, how do I charge? How do I know I'm going to be able to charge?
And that is more important than the price right now. Like, the price is lower than gas, a lot lower. But if I'm going to pull up, get out of my car, spend a few minutes trying to get this working, if I know it's just going to work, I'm picking that site.
And there may be a future where there's another score that incorporates price too, because I think as we make this swing, the next wave of drivers, like as car prices come down too, we get, broader demographics and drivers, more price sensitivity. And I love the idea of having like a price score as well. But yeah, price and reliability, like.
Does this, like, the one thing about EVs that I always kind of found interesting too, in Ontario, power is hydroelectric nuclear, right? So basically it's more or less green energy. If you're in a state that only has, or a province that only has gas power plants or coal power plants, your electricity is still kind of doing some environmental impact. Do you ever see putting that into anything, of really kind of showing that full scope of, yeah, you're really getting renewable or close to as renewable as possible energy?
It's interesting because we're in talks with a partner fairly new about being able to pull, like, to automate carbon credits, essentially management of carbon credits. So they will, they have a software that, will calculate and then sell your credits for you, et cetera. And, that is different based on your grid at the end of the day, what your carbon credits are worth. It is, but it is interesting. Like, I have seen recent studies where even in a coal powered grid, like Nova Scotia, for example, this is the study I was most recently reading was on Nova Scotia. If Efficiency Nova Scotia, I think, or Nova Scotia Power had done this study where it's better to drive an electric vehicle even on that grid than it is to have an internal combustion engine. So, it's positive steps, but we definitely need grid cleanup to come along behind it or aside it. But I do think where the carbon piece comes in specifically is, as an operator or a fleet or whoever, the cleaner your power, the more it's worth to you on the carbon side.
That's cool. Yeah. I don't say I want to go buy an electric vehicle now.
Please do. You know what? Go test drive a few, like some good ones, and you will. It is really hard to go back.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing like being on the 401, stuck in traffic, in your EV, looking around at like everybody with their fumes and their noise, and you're like in this quiet environment. If only self-driving would come, you could actually just be napping.
I did it once. There was one summer. 2 summers ago, Polestar came down from Toronto with a bunch of vehicles, and we're doing test drives at a Conestoga Mall. And I'm a cheap summer person with my kids. I'm like, kids, we're gonna go do a test drive. So, and the rep there was just like, are your kids coming with? I'm like, no, this is like our what we're doing today. We're having lunch and test
we're
driving
having an outing.
The woman, she loved it. What music do you like? And my middle kid was questionable choice of music, but put it on, blasting, and we just like tore off on this thing. And all the time they see them and they're like, are we gonna get that? I'm like, we'll get it one day. So maybe
what was your reaction to driving an EV, like the torque on it and
it's so ridiculous. And even the one, because it if you take your foot, you don't have to put your foot on the brake. It's like the one pedal operation.
Right. Regenerative braking.
Like, what is happening? And it took me 5 minutes to get it. And then I was like, okay, I could do this. This would be totally fine.
I think it's so fun to see a person drive an EV for the first time, and because I think they're expecting a sewing machine motor, it's got
just goes.
Like it goes. It is such a fast.
We were like
pickup.
out in the country, and it was. Yeah. I could definitely.
And there's lots of ways to try it. Like you can churro. There's the Plug and Drive campaign, which shows up randomly at cities across the country. Probably not randomly. I shouldn't say that. There's a schedule. I'm sure if you check out their website, they show up at cities across the country with fleets of cars that you can try and see how you like it.
Buddy put a deposit on one of the Volkswagen.
ID4?
New Mini, the minivan.
Mini.
The minis.
Yeah. Those are amazing.
Beautiful.
That's my dream car. Actually, is.
I'm actually going to the EV Expo in Toronto in just a couple of weeks. Are there cars there? I believe there are test drives there as well. I know everything electric in Vancouver.
I know.
And then they're all there in one spot for the Vancouver show. I'm not sure about
that
the Toronto
show
one.
is more about like our local talent from what I've seen in the past, but there probably are a few I've seen buses there and things like that in the past, electric buses, and so lots of innovation. And then there's a car that was developed in partnership with the University of Windsor that is literally Canadian engineered EV that's been there in the past. So probably some cool things to check out there. I wish I was more informed for. Yeah.
You'll edit that part,
You'll
right?
edit that.
I can clean it up. Well, listen.
Insert soundbite from Nino DeCara.
Nino is the Canadian kind of thought leader around EV. Like, he's got an incredible newsletter that he curates. This is his show, the EV Expo in Toronto, and he is doing so much to educate and lift up the EV knowledge and awareness and growth for better adoption.
His organization is Electric Autonomy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's put that in the show notes. Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us and sharing the story. And now we want to go test drive a car. We'll go have a road trip around.
I was just about to say that. Road trip.
We can go. We can drive out to Ayr and go to. Well, I was going to say we go to Willibald in Ayr.
You know, we'll just pick you guys up, and then we'll take you, and you could experience.
It's really nice outside today.
It's a patio kind of day.
Could be patio day.
Could be.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, and we'll have all the links to Clockwork in the show notes.
Terrific.
Thank you, Alex.
This has been Tina. Fabulous.
Of course.
Thanks.
So after that conversation, I think we should go and test drive.
100%.
I do. So my buddy Joseph, I don't think he was lying, but he put a deposit down on that Volkswagen minibus. That looks dope.
Yeah. I was actually in at Service Ontario the other day, and I was the second person in line because I got there half an hour before they opened. And I know that's the trick.
I like it.
Yeah. And the first guy in line was talking to a person that works at the Volkswagen dealership, and they were talking about those vans, and they are just so cool.
Well, as always, thank you for listening to our conversations about tech and children's hockey here on the Communitech Tech About Town podcast. If you ever have any questions about programs and services and offerings and general help from Communitech for founders of any kind of company, really, tech company, tech adjacent, tech, whatever, visit communitech.ca. And to keep up to date with Communitech events and news and anything that's happening within Waterloo Region Tech, you can always follow Communitech's social media accounts at Communitech on all the major social media platforms. Thank you, Tina, for jumping in.
This was fun.
As always. And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.